And we're back. To discuss why everyone is running to others to intervene in this mess is our guest, James Difiore, host of Black Belt podcast on our network, who has been all over this story. Welcome.
Thanks, man. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing. Yeah, especially since we only asked today. um, you have been basically, we like to follow leadership races and we talk about them, but neither of us have any inside contacts. And you just wake up one day and one of the candidates is gone.
I just don't use mine.
No, okay.
I just don't use mine.
And one of the candidates is just gone, and it's being telegraphed that he's going to be gone. And the reason for which he's gone when it happens is totally different from the reason that was telegraphed, right? At first, we were saying that there was something suspected, that there was bulk membership buys, and that's a big no-no. But all of a sudden it's, oh, no, wait a minute. There's someone on staff that's been paid by a corporation. So a violation of the Elections Canada Act rather than just a violation of the race rules. That seems a little, that to me at that moment said there's something fishy. Then I heard the call came from inside the house, fishier. Then I'm following your feed and it's just like drop after drop after drop. I mean, it's like, whoa, this is a hot mess. So, rather than trying to explain it myself to everyone, this. So I figured just ask you, what the hell is going on?
Well, I can understand why people might be confused. Also, excuse me, this was the third sort of crack at the egg of trying to get him ousted. The first time was before the leadership race began, and there were people who were advising the party upper brass not to even let him run.
Really? On what basis?
They didn't say.
Right. Why is everything they won't say?
Well, because but like internal party processes and the way that parties are run are not democratic.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because the parties are then going to be put in charge of a government inside a democratic country. So it's irony times 12, right? But so there was that. So there was always a contingent interested in him not running. Mm-hmm. And then there was a trial balloon about a month ago where people were wondering, as you just pointed out, whether or not there were some fishy things going on with his membership numbers. I think at the time he had like 30,000, and that was a big number at the time. Mm-hmm. But then a couple weeks later, Pierre Poilievre has like 250,000, and his number dwarfs Patrick Brown's. And then all of a sudden, wouldn't you know, no one's interested in auditing memberships anymore. Because if you're going to audit Patrick Brown's 30,000 memberships, then obviously most people are going to be like, well, what about his 200,000 memberships? And then so that issue went away. Total shock. Big surprise. And then, of course, this latest one, which there are so many fishy things about this. I sort of know this woman. I had to go back and look. We exchanged like 300 messages during the first Patrick Brown scandal, me and Deb. Mm-hmm. And she was she was a Patrick Brown fan, like a booster, like loved him. She referred to the members of the Progressive Conservative Party, like Randy Hillier and Lisa McLeod and, Vic Fideli as the coup crew. She was really upset when he was ousted in 2018. And so, she probably seemed like a trusted, staffer. And the idea that this person has so much power that they can just make an accusation and the party without any consultation on Brown's camp. There are people within the party. I just interviewed Rob Davis and I spoke with the Knife. I don't know if you guys know who the Knife is. John McTishishin. He's like a conservative operative, a friend of the party. He's totally reasonable, by the way. He's like, stand-up guy. And he was saying that this was it was basically a joke. They didn't inform the Patrick Brown campaign of what the reason was. And then they started to trickle out information. And then finally they trickled out the whistleblower, and I'm using air quotes, the whistleblower's name. But they still haven't named the company that is allegedly paying her, which is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard of. Usually the accuser will sometimes choose to remain anonymous, and it will be, and then it won't take long for people to figure out who the company is. But nonetheless, like, this is a very strange thing because they didn't want the company's name released. I don't really understand it, except when you realize that it takes months and months for Elections Canada to investigate something like this. So Patrick Brown, just by having his case, or whatever you want to call it, punted to Elections Canada, is gone, because Elections Canada will not be sorting this out anytime soon. Definitely. Which leads me to think that Elections Canada, I don't know if this is considered playing politics or not, but it's almost like Election Canada's, process is being weaponized itself. I'm wondering if Elections Canada might, if they were allowed to just be like, actually, we're fast tracking this and we'll have a decision on Tuesday. That would be amazing, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I noticed that Elections Canada had put out some tweets making it very clear that they have nothing to do with, violations of party constitution or leadership race rules, only clear violations of the Elections Act, which may be the reason why the narrative on why Patrick Brown might be going out suddenly changed on a dime.
Yeah, could be. I don't know.
It's all very fishy, isn't it? I mean, it just...
Yeah, the timing is a little peculiar.
So
maybe.
Is there any I'm always, as a communications person, I'm always very, very, very leery of, they did something bad. We can't tell you what that something bad is, but trust us, it's something really bad statements. Yeah. And everything about this is sort of like this. At first, they didn't tell us what the violation was. And then you hear from the grapevine what the violation was, and it's not what we thought it would be. And now we can't find out who the company is, and then it's a whistleblower, and we can't find out who she is until somehow we do. And then
she also has a contract,
yes,
to be a scrutineer counting ballots on I think it's July 16th her contract starts. And I actually messaged her and I asked her, hey, when did you secure your scrutineer contract? And she's like, no comment.
Yes.
So it's just like,
it stinks. It's a little fishy.
So how do you work on a campaign and be allowed to be a scrutineer, even if the campaign implodes? I mean,
well, every campaign
involved.
has the right to send someone to oversee that process.
Okay.
It's the same thing as a general election where you have like say we just deal with the four parties, like the Greens, the NDPs, Liberals, and Conservatives will all have someone at the polling station that will be looking at ballots and to make sure that everyone agrees and they're on the same page as to what the vote count is. And it's the same thing in a leadership. So you want someone there from each leadership camp to scrutineer to see what the results would be.
Okay, so it's not odd that there's a scrutineer. It's just what are the odds that the scrutineer would happen to be this particular person?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and it's and just the fact that she won't tell us when she signed the contract. If she didn't do anything wrong, that means the contract was probably signed weeks and weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It's also possible that she didn't do anything wrong and signed the contract the next day. It really could be like completely innocuous.
Yeah,
or she could be getting rewarded for something that she did. The problem is, and someone, I always forget his name, Powers. Is it Tim Powers?
Tim Powers, yes.
Yeah, he's the
pundit.
Yeah, the pundit, and I think he does. He works for like a big research firm or something. Anyways,
yes.
He was saying the other day that it's like it's not about the veracity of the claim, although that's obviously part of it. It's just the lack of transparency so that the public and the media can take a look at the veracity of the claim and think to themselves whether it was worth turfing her or not. Mm-hmm. The fact that you're hiding that. I mean, I always try to take a look at this from a communications standpoint and what they might be thinking. And sometimes, and this might be one of those situations, they might say to themselves, this is going to look really blatant, but it'll die down and go away. And I think that that's what they're hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
By the time but first of all, it's what, October when they pick the leader? September, October, something like that. September. So that's still 2 months. And and by that time, are we going to be talking about Patrick Brown? Probably not, unless Patrick Brown starts to do things for himself that allows his name to remain in the press, which would be much to the chagrin of Poilievre. So we'll see what happens. I don't know how much fight Patrick Brown has left in him.
This has got to be exhausting, right? I mean,
well, he's got the best lawyer in the world working for him.
Mm-hmm.
I love her so much. I fucking love her so much. I'm sorry I swore, but I just
no, please.
I'm just like, yeah. Anyways, I do a lot of things for her. Really because she's fiercely intelligent. She's obviously super, super smart. She's tough and she's just beautiful and all those things. Like, I don't know, just beat me up, do something. Sorry for the aside, but anytime I think of her, that's what I think of. But anyways, he's got the best lawyer in the world, or at least the country, on his side. But the problem is there might not be an existing process that even allows him to get back into the race.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I'm wondering if there might be something else at play here, and hopefully we'll get to that. But I want to go through sort of like, what could you, for our listeners who may not have been following it as closely, what has happened specifically over the last few days? Could you describe it for them?
Just in what? Just like when the story came out?
Yeah, like this and the development since specifically.
Okay, so since the story came out, and at first it was an anonymous accuser, and the company was unknown, and then it trickled out. The accuser's name was known, so it's Deb Jodoin, I think you say her name.
And if she pronounces it French way, it would be Jodoin. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And but the corporation name still isn't out. The party itself says that they gave Brown a chance to come to a meeting to plead his case. The Brown camp is saying that never happened. And then the party said that they gave him all the time in the world to answer these charges, and the Brown camp's like, they didn't even tell me what the charges were. So it's what is interesting, and Rob Davis that I had on Blackball earlier today was saying that the processes between, like the difference in processes between internal parties like the Conservative Party of Canada and Elections Canada are even at odds with one another. Like they're contradictory when it comes to the same types of things. Like what might be considered a campaign finance violation for Elections Canada might not be considered that inside the party. I'm just using that as an example. So even if Elections Canada finds some sort of irregularity, it might not be a breach of party rules. And it becomes really confusing because people don't know who they're supposed to defer to. And what Rob Davis was sort of suggesting is that there needs to be some sort of alignment between Elections Canada and internal party policies, so that there isn't these types of confusions. I mean, how easy is it to derail a campaign in this country? This guy paid me money. Oh, really? Yeah. Who paid it for you? Okay. He's done. Like it's that wouldn't happen to Poilievre, right? We're pretty sure. Candace Bergen is the intern leader. I don't think that she would allow that to happen to him in the same fashion that it happened to Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown, it has to be said, is also kind of a glutton for punishment. Like there is a very strange fascination that I have with why he would even insert himself into a race like that. I mean, listen, it's ballsy, but months ago when he announced his leadership bid, I remember I tweeted something, I think, but I remember saying on someone's podcast, it was either mine or Dean's, that this is a most ridiculous play by him because they're going to fuck him. They will completely fuck this guy over. There is no doubt in my mind. Mm-hmm. And not only was it because he's not popular in conservative circles, but also because the same operatives and strategists that work behind the scenes that executed that coup in 2018 are the same people, by and large, that were working for Poilievre's campaign this time. And it's just like, I don't know how many times you have to step on that rake
Banana
in
peel.
order to realize that your forehead hurts, right?
Well,
Like,
is it because he refuses to play to the Reformicon conservative game? Because he's a progressive, comparatively speaking, right? I mean, this man supports a woman's right to make a choice. And he has come flat out and said, we're not going to change that. Whereas Poliev or Poliev or Skippy the Wonder Pigeon, as I like to call him, said, I won't do anything. He put out one simple tweet of, I won't vote against it. Never said anything about the party, right?
yeah.
Which means you know damn well he's going to let his party do whatever the hell it wants to do, which is take away a woman's right to make a choice about her body in a medical situation. And I get the feeling that Patrick Brown is not the most religious fella in the world, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying that because if you don't buy into that sort of PBCC mentality in the current Reformicon party, they're going to throw you under the bus, and I think that's pretty much what they did to him.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. He is a progressive conservative. And they might still have the name in the
They aren't,
provincial
though.
party, but they are
They
not.
aren't.
And of course, they treated the word progressive like a tumor in the federal party. So they got rid of the name, which is probably the most honest thing they've done in the last 20 years. Really.
Right about that.
But what's interesting to me is that the lack of political courage on the Liberal and NDP side right now. We are what? Anywhere between a year and a half and 4 years away from an election, right? Who knows what it's going to be? I don't know how long this coalition between the NDP and the Liberals are going to last. If history tells us anything, probably not that long. Why wouldn't they now put, finally, abortion laws on the books that have the most limited restrictions ever? Because if the Conservatives get a majority government, what they're going to probably end up doing, because right now in Canada there's no laws on abortion, it's just decriminalized. And what happened when they legalized weed? Before weed legalization, there were 9 total possession charges that you could be charged with. After legalization, there are 44. So if the Conservatives would get a majority government and sort of placate moderates by saying, no, first of all, we're going to open up the abortion debate. That's going to piss off the left. But no, we're going to make a legal framework for abortion so that it's legal and not just decriminalized. And that sounds great on paper, but as any abortion activist will tell you, what that's going to lead to is a whole shit ton of restrictions. So I don't know why the Liberals and the NDP aren't using their majority total to just push an abortion law without crazy restrictions so that they can take that power out of the Conservatives' hands. But
I've been told that the reason for which that hasn't been done, the other side of the argument is as soon as you have a law, then you have someone trying to cut down whatever the reasonable, you have to first of all determine what the reasonable limits are, and then you create the ground on which for a debate to happen by not having the law whatsoever. There's nothing to cut. It's a medical service. It remains with the doctor and the patient.
But it's not a right. And that is what I think is the trade-off. It's an interesting debate. Listen, it's above my pay grade. I am not a person who knows what the right decision is, to be perfectly honest with you. So I can see a good argument on either side. But, there is a part of me that feels like that there's always going to be a feather in the quill of the social conservative the longer that there is no law. I don't know how to navigate those waters, to be perfectly honest, but if our society is ebbing and flowing in such a way where that pendulum swing becomes ever more peripheral, what are we going to do when this country becomes 60% conservative? What's going to happen?
That's really
and why would we wait until that happens? It's interesting. I think it's a fight that needs to be had. I think it needs to be had sooner than later. But again, this is not my area of expertise, abortion activism. So
no. And it really makes one wonder why they aren't doing something. I hear what you're saying, Douglas, and it makes perfect sense. But at the same token, if they don't do something in the next year and a half to 3 years, because as you said, James, who knows? It could run till 2024, or we could have an election in the next year and a half or 2 years. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why aren't they getting on this right now, considering, strike while the iron is hot. It's a hot button issue. I get the House is not sitting right now. It's July. Fine. Understandable. But get to work on codifying this as it is a medical choice only. There's the law. It's medical choice. Right? There's no criminalization. There's no laws around it. It is a medical service, a medical option, like a surgery, like if you want to get a nose job or
But even that argument even falls flat with me. And I'm technically pro-choice, right? Like, I use the word technically because I do think it is ending a human life in progress, but I don't think that you should ban women from doing it, because then the alternative is women getting back alley abortions.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you enforce giving birth to women. So because of that, I am pro-choice. But I am also very clear that it's not like getting a knee scoped.
No, but it is still a medical decision by a woman that has to undergo surgery to do it, is what I'm getting at, right?
No, I get you.
Yes, it's it's not like, well, I'll just go in and get my brow lifted or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not a simple procedure. But you also have to consider the fact that it is a traumatic psychological medical procedure for anybody who has to go through it. Whether and when you get into the argument, which every time somebody says, well, women use a late-term abortion as, oh, shut up. If it's late-term, it's because it is medically necessary, because 99 out of 100 times that woman has made the choice to have that baby if it's late-term, if it has to be a late-term abortion. They've probably already picked out, a crib and painted the room and chosen a name and picked out clothes and had a baby shower. So the late-term abortion argument, no, throw it out with the water. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sorry, it was just a term that sort of worked. But you know what I mean? It's the late-term stuff.
Throw the baby out with the broken water.
Yeah.
Why don't you?
It makes me sick when people pull that one up and go, well, it's a late term and that's just a choice. That's a form of birth. No, it's not. No, it's not. And any woman going through that procedure, and I know a number who have had to do it, via rape, via molestation, via you name it. I'm not getting into naming names because these are women that are still I'm very close with to this day. And they've had to go through this at 13, 14, 15, and 16 years of age. And now later in life, they're like, I will fight tooth and nail to the death to make sure anybody has the right to make the same choice that I had. Because you know how many children are born out of rape? You'd be shocked at the numbers. People go, well, no, the woman has a way of No, they don't.
Like virtually everyone born before 1920.
Basically. That's not an exaggeration, though.
I know. Well, it might be a little bit. But
a little bit, but minor hyperbole in there.
I know the right like to hang their hat on things like sex selection abortion, and I know it happens very little. But it's like the reason why the abortion discussion, I won't call it a debate right now, but just like the subject of abortion is interesting to me because there's all these weird pitfalls and trapdoors that you don't know what to do with, especially when you add the veneer of English common law. Because like, for example, if my wife was pregnant and she was 8 months pregnant and somebody came and viciously assaulted her and stabbed her in her abdomen or whatever, and then we lost the baby, that is murder.
Right.
To me. But English common law can't call it murder because then that sets a precedent for rights of the unborn. So it's such a fucking like head game, trying to get around like all of these legal, terms and definitions and what constitutes like a life. And so, and I always try to like, listen, I don't like how polarized we are. So I am constantly sometimes to my own detriment, looking for a mediated position in the middle between two sides. And while I am pro-choice, I think it would be really important for people to understand that it isn't just crazy people who are pro-life. If you are under the impression that an abortion is ending a baby's life, if that is how you feel about it, and that is what motivates you, I am sympathetic to that position because of the realness of where it's coming. That's why before COVID, I was really sympathetic with anti-vaxxers because while they were duped, they were motivated by the safety of their kids to believe in the things like what they believed in, like what was it, the autism because of the mercury inside the injections.
Thermosol and,
like that to me is two things. It's misguided, but you had reputable people pushing that for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you rewind a decade worth of, it's very difficult. And so I think the mistake that we often make, especially on the progressive side, is that we tend to trade barbs and like really kind of aggressive like language. And we use that instead of some sort of like olive branch and understanding and still maintaining your position. You're not changing your position or anything, but we can't bully people into our positions.
Mhm.
And listen, the right do it too, obviously, right? The right, you shouldn't stand outside abortion clinics and verbally assault women that are going in. Like clearly that is fuckery. But there's a version of that on the other side. And I think that we shoot ourselves in the foot when we don't recognize that.
Mhm.
And I'll go along with that. Completely agree with that statement, but you have to draw the line at intolerance, right? The paradox of tolerance. You cannot tolerate intolerance.
That's correct. I would agree with that.
Okay, so we're all on the same page. That's all I wanted to say. So let's go back to Patrick Brown for a sec, though. I'm getting way off topic here because I sometimes do that. And again, I'm going to go back to, I think he just, because he's a progressive and the party is not, and they're, you know, heavily tied in with Chipper and the PBCC and Lord knows what else. I think he's just too progressive for them, and he won't play ball. And because of that, they're like, "No, he's done. We're going to get rid of him."
Yeah, I mean, he brings a diverse constituency with him.
Yes,
a lot of like India, Pakistan, like East Indians, you know, different religious groups. Like, you know, he is a friend to communities that often go unheard, right? Like, you know, that's his base basically.
Right.
And I knew a black woman who was a staffer for him, who told me like in 2018, she's like, in 2017 they would go to meetings in like these rural areas, and they'd have the public there, and then the public would leave. So there'd be like Patrick Brown, he was leader, I think, at the time, and a bunch of MPs, maybe half dozen. And they were talking like this in front of this black staffer. They were talking like this. Well, Patrick, you know, I'm not sure if our constituents are ready for the diversity of your constituents. So, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And also, he wanted to legalize weed.
Yes, yeah.
And I had caucus meetings leaked to me a couple times by somebody, and you know, and they were concerned about that because they cited the religious beliefs of their senior citizen base, really, and they were afraid of weed legalization. They also wanted weed legalization to go under the Kathleen Wynne plan of selling it via the LCBOs because they didn't want to be seen as profiteering off of drugs. Right. Because they are living in the 50s. Right.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
So, under Dougie Ford, there are, within a 2-kilometer walk of my apartment, there are 10 cannabis stores, 3 liquor stores, 2 grocery stores that sell beer and wine, a brewery, and a beer store.
That's called Liberty.
Oh, I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I guess he just wants to keep us drunk and high so we can't see when he's stealing from us.
Yeah, I live near the Golden Lake First Nations community, and there's like something like 23 dispensaries within a 10-minute drive, and 18 of them sell magic mushrooms. So I'm pretty happy. I live in the magic mushroom capital of Canada, which is really great for a person like me.
I didn't think they were legalized yet, though.
I did shrooms on Canada Day weekend. Can I just say that it was like I had never done shrooms before, and we got them at a First Nations community in Brantford, and it was like I kept on trying to shake it off. I'm sitting there like, and then I just accepted that. For the next 6 hours, I was living in a cartoon. Everything was a cartoon. It was so amazing. I just want to let you guys know that I'm a big proponent of shrooms, in case you haven't noticed.
So here, the strongest drug I've ever taken is whiskey, right? Outside of a prescribed psychotropic drug to keep my brain from wanting me to kill myself. I know that sounds harsh, but I have antidepressants. But I've never done recreational drugs. And I don't, hey, look, man, if that's what floats your boat, cool. And you know what? Last time I've ever seen a couple of guys smoke a big fatty, did they ever get into a fight? Because that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You see guys drinking whiskey all night long, and then they might throw down. But two
That's
guys
right.
smoking a joint, no, that doesn't happen. Number one. And number two, and I'd say 99 out of 100 times, somebody might smoke a lot and go, "Oh, dude, call me a cab or I'm crashing on your couch. I can't do anything. I can't feel my legs," right? And again, I'm only speaking from experience in the sense that guys I've seen throughout my life. So I was a proponent for legalization a long time ago because I thought we're throwing bad money at this. We're never going to win this war on drugs. So just legalize it, decriminalize it, whatever. Make it so we can tax it, and then we can have programs for people who have addictions, kind of like gambling or alcoholism. We have programs so we can help people, and we'll save a ton of money in the process and turn a profit.
Yeah.
Right? How is that a bad thing?
It's not. They should have just given all the dispensaries that existed at the time a turnkey solution to continue to exist, you know. But
now magic mushrooms are psilocybin? Psilocybin, thank you.
Yep.
They're starting to use that to treat depression and anxiety, and microdosing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like if you take the microdose, you're not getting high at all. Like
that's why I don't take the microdose.
But apparently it reboots your brain, and people that have been prescribed it by doctors have said the difference is night and day. No side effects, a complete reboot, the end of depression, the end of anxiety. And I'm like, hey, you know what? If my doctor would say, hey, we're going to give this a shot, I'd be all in.
Yeah. Well, I had I wouldn't say long-term brain damage. That sounds dramatic, but my dopamine and serotonin levels have been in flux since I was a rave promoter. Let's just put it that way. You know, I did a lot of ecstasy, and so I would get these things that a lot of people who are coming off of SSRIs get, which is like brain buzzes, and for years, just years. They're not constantly, but like all the time, pretty much. Like, you know, I might miss a day or two here or there. It gets really bad when I get dehydrated, this and that. I did a bunch of shrooms. I don't know what month it was. Maybe November or something like that. And they were so intense, not only the shrooms, but the brain buzzes. And then all of a sudden, the brain buzzes just stopped. I was in the middle of my trip and they just stopped. And they haven't been back.
Oh, well, that's
and I had these for like a decade.
Well, I've been listening.
Yeah. What's that?
I've been listening to lots of stuff about this because it's. I've been wanting to do an episode on this eventually too. And the way it's been described to me is that just that when we get into certain situations, we have certain ways of thinking about things. And if you think of them as like cross-country ski trails, like this, the groove's already in. So, this situation comes in and that you just go down that path. And when you have that type of experience in a controlled setting with, you know, a psychiatrist, whatnot, but also elsewhere, but when they're prescribing it this way for people, like this, it basically, the psychiatrist can guide you like this and then basically starts creating new grooves. So when you get
establishing new neural pathways,
has another path, a new pathway to take rather than the old one that used to bring you to the old places that were not productive.
Yep.
And it does.
Same thing with MDMA.
Yeah.
MDMA being treated for PTSD and things like that. It just allows you to like anything that strips your ego and fills it within its place, like a sense of purpose and empathy are going to be things that are successful, I think. You know, like I take, like, listen, I have an Adderall prescription. At this point, it feels just recreational.
Oh, yeah.
It does. Like, I don't know what good it's doing me. You know, I feel really productive when I have it, but I feel high, you know, like it's like, and so I really should stop taking it, but I don't because I feel high. Right. So it's like, what do I do? But, you know, but the, you know, the things like MDMA, things like psilocybin, you know, and there's probably even a place for LSD in the myriad of therapeutic advances that we should be making with these types of drugs. Right. And I'm there for the party. I will fake a mental illness to get my hands on some great psilocybin. No, I won't. I'm just saying.
I just want to be able to see people get to a better place because I was lucky enough that I was on Paxil back in the 90s, and that shit made me crazy. And the brain.
What is Paxil?
It's an SSRI.
Okay.
It's not on the market anymore. Too many people killed themselves on it. It was a terrible, terrible narcotic. And the brain buzz I got from that was so bad that I was suicidal. It was horrible. But luckily, after consulting with a friend of mine who is a physician who said, look, just go on Zoloft, sertraline. She says, try this, and the side effects are minimal. And if you don't like it, you can go off of it and everything will go back to normal. And I went, okay. So I went and saw my doctor, and I started the medication February 28th, 2020, which for somebody who has severe depression and anxiety, just before the world shut down, I started on antidepressants, and it made a huge difference in my life. But that was me, and I got lucky. I didn't know that it was going to work out, and it did.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. That's a good success story.
Yeah. Now we're talking about topics like abortion and drugs and harm reduction and that type of stuff. But it seems to all come back to a similar theme for me, is that he's bringing new constituencies for which all their old plays don't work. I mean, they burned their base on ethnic communities after the work Jason Kenney did with their snitch line, right? And their immigration ceremony thing. You said it yourself, right? They think that the membership is not ready, so they don't want to have to campaign to both the regular base and a diverse crowd. They just want one simple message, it seems. They don't want to get into the discussions about what do we do about marijuana. It's just simpler to say, all drugs are bad and people who do them are bad. And, if you get caught, lock them up and throw away the key because we're law and order, blah, blah, pew, pew, right? To me, the Conservative Party is a party that's essentially lazy. Like, it doesn't want to do things differently. It doesn't want to learn new things. It still is convinced that it can win by doing the things that it does, but it's become the situation where the Conservative Party of Canada really only wins when familiarity breeds contempt with the Liberals and they need to get spanked. They win by default. It's not their policies.
Yeah. So go ahead.
And the party itself is in a weird situation because he wants to make them take a step to the left towards the center, which they'll still be quite right of. But now there is, unlike before, there is the existence of parties like the PPC and the Mavericks on the other side for them to lose votes to, which wasn't the case before. The Liberals always had that with the Greens and the NDP. The Conservatives are not there. And it seems to me that when we had the rally, the truck nuts thing in January, that when they saw just how much money and how fast it came. And I think we've seen since that, like, a heavy amount of the portion of the donors, if you cross-reference them, are also members of the Conservative Party of Canada. But they saw that, and it's like, that's our money, right? Everything on the right is ours, and that money is now going to potentially PPC and Maverick supporters. We want that. That's our money. And they're making a concerted move more to the right while arguing, because of the NDP Liberal deal, that they've taken a step to the left. It's like the center is being, if you believe that the Liberal and NDP thing is a step to the left, like this, the Conservatives are not winning by taking a further step to the right. The center is being vacated even more.
Yeah, but they're doing what they have been.
The money is. And
they're doing what they've been doing in every leadership contest in my memory. Which is the conservative two-step, as I've been calling it over the last couple of years, where the first step during leadership campaigns is to really placate the people that donate money, and those people happen to be really social conservatives, right? So they'll throw roses to the social conservatives during leadership campaigns,
right.
And then when the election comes, the two-step part of the conservative two-step is to basically abandon them and to make it seem like you are campaigning from the center. Now, I don't know when the next election is going to be, but I will tell you that if the next election was before the end of this year, I don't think Pierre Poilievre, if he becomes leader, would make that two-step. I think for the first time in my memory, he would not only campaign for his leadership bid from the far right, but he would campaign in the general election from the far right as well for the first time. That is the gamble I think that he would make.
Yes.
Now, if it's 2 years from now and COVID is kind of done and, done, and we're kind of back to normal and the fluidity of society has taken a little bit of a breather, he might then go back to campaigning as a moderate. Then the question becomes, will he govern as a moderate or will he govern as the mega guy? So these are all really open-ended questions right now.
Yeah.
And
my instinct tells me he would govern as a MAGA guy based on his time as, the guy who brought in the election reform thing.
Oh, yeah. He tried to throw me under the bus during that thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I voted 3 times in a federal election in 2004, and I did it for a story for Now Magazine. And he kept on citing my name while he was pitching the Fair Elections Act. We don't want any situations like the James Difiore situation in Trinity Spadina in Toronto, right? And it was all about that. And it got to the point where I ended up writing a piece for Rabble that was like basically apologizing for my voting stunt. The apology was like, sorry about that, I guess. It was more like that because I wasn't sorry. I was actually really mad at Now Magazine because they threw me under the bus because they didn't realize it was a right-wing issue to have IDs at the polls. They were just like, you can vote 3 times in the election? I'm like, here's my plan. They're like, got their lawyers on the phone. They're like, do it. And I'm like, okay. And then I did it and they published it and everything was fine. And then a year later, I wrote a letter to the editor of the Toronto Star saying that Elections Canada has got their work cut out for them. And how do I know? Oh, I voted 3 times in the last federal election. And then CSIS came to my door. Yeah. So it was like, anyways, the point is that the Fair Elections Act was one of the most hilariously titled pieces of legislation in the history of our country. It really was. It's like the Patriot Act. It was that bad.
Oh, there was nothing patriotic about the Patriot Act.
No, it was not.
So here's what I'm wondering now. And maybe you got your ear to the ground on this, but it seems to me because the center is being vacated, definitely by the right, by the left, if we buy into that, that saying. The Conservative Party of Canada seems to not have any fucks to give about burnt bridges or hurt feelings. I mean, Maxime Bernier went off and, started his own party like this. And, he was not publicly humiliated and had his file sent to Elections Canada and thrown out of the party. It just seems to me that their table is being set quite well for the emergence of a party on the right, still on the center, but a little left to wherever the Conservative Party of Canada is going, because Patrick Brown's getting screwed in this. Charest's probably getting kneecapped in the same process, right? At the same time, will all Patrick Brown voters come and vote anyway? Maybe not. And maybe that's enough for Pierre, because when they announced that they had 675,000 memberships and Pierre Poliver said that he had like 312, well, that's not half. That's not a first ballot win. If Patrick Brown
would be a first ballot win, though, like in the sense that, it would eclipse the second place person by.
But it wouldn't be a 50, right? It wouldn't be a 50. It would allow, and it would.
But that's not how it works. I don't think it's not the memberships don't translate into. Right. Yeah.
Right. Like this, but they've sold twice as many memberships in Alberta this time around as before.
But what would happen though, like with Patrick Brown supporters would probably rally to Charest or not vote, right? And so there's a lot of risk involved with what Pierre Poilievre's doing right now. They're but again, is there enough time that people will forget?
Yeah, but it doesn't take a big portion of people who are going to come in for Patrick Brown and now sees, okay, well, the party's going alt-white, especially the membership to whom he sold them who are not white, and say, you know what, I'm not going to go vote. I'm not going to vote. And maybe if 10, 15%, that's the difference that allows Poliver, I guess, and makes it so that Charest can't get those additional votes that would push him off in the third round or something.
But so it's important to remember, though, that those memberships are not like, say there's 670,000 new members. That doesn't mean that there's going to be 670,000 votes. You don't even look at that pool. Once the membership part is done, you kind of toss it away.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you go to the convention and you work shit out. But I wouldn't be too fixated on those numbers as meaning much
Oh,
of
no.
anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I'm thinking that because of the allegation of the possible double sales of votes from the Poliver camp in the last week,
Oh,
I
right.
have a feeling that the plan all along has been to show himself as inevitable right from the get-go, right? I've got all these people. So it's like, okay, 600,000 memberships were sold. I've got 312,000. Okay, I've won. And he just runs with that because, I mean, he's making up reality as he goes, right? He's running from prime minister from the get-go. He's got 60 MPs that support him. I've got a majority. It's just like, honey, it doesn't work that way. So, but he's going to do it anyway, right? So, I mean, oh my God, 600,000 memberships sold like this. I've sold 350,000. I've won. Just give it to me now. Let's just coast for the rest of the summer and, September, just give it to me. Right. That was the plan.
And so far so good.
I
mean, like we can tear him down as much as we want, and I will gladly do so until he wins or loses. But he has run the best campaign of all the candidates. I don't know if his fingerprints are necessarily on the Brown ousting. I suspect that allies certainly were responsible, at least. But he's run a good listen. Like if you are able to say to yourself, I don't like the convoy protest, but like I'm one of those people that I don't care if people donated to the convoy. I don't think that means they're a criminal. I don't think that means anything. I just think that they express their political beliefs through $100 donation to a bunch of yahoos that I don't support. But I don't care. I don't think it means anything. And I think that every time that they hear someone on the left go, they vote, people that donated to the convoy shouldn't be allowed to, like, they should be fired for shit like that. People that say that are just growing the passion and emotions for politics on the right. I don't know if the left understands how many gifts they give the right in this country.
Yep.
Shut up about pronouns. Not because I wanted not because I'm saying anything about your existence, but because it doesn't crack the top 50 of important things that this country is facing right now. It really, truly doesn't. And so the more that we talk about these really peripheral ancillary issues, the people, the progressives and people on the left, the more the right wing grows in this country. Because people in the middle are like, for fuck's sakes, I don't want to talk about this shit. I want to talk about my job that I don't have. I want to talk about the economy. I want to talk about foreign policy. I want to talk about the environment. I don't want to talk about something called ZER. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I believe in it, but I know that it's not important to me. And the more that the left does that in Canada, the larger the right is going to be. And it's really it's frustrating when you're a moderate and you're looking at that because you're just like, Jesus Christ. Like,
enough of that. I can't argue with any of that.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
I've been saying sort of the same thing for a while. That it's like, it's frustrating because anybody who knows me knows I'm very left-leaning and that I'm level-headed, I'd like to think. But at the same token, I'm afraid when I see how far the right is leaning in this country. They're not even right anymore. They're pushing towards fascism, and many of them don't even realize it. And that's the disturbing part. They don't get that they're not just voting for themselves, they're voting against their own best interests, and they don't even see it.
Yeah, and that happens all the time. And I know that this is going to sound like a Jordan Peterson quote, but the version of that on the left, and I'm not saying they're equal. I never know why it matters if something's equal. So when someone says that's a false equivalency, I'm just like, maybe one side's worse. I don't know, but like, clearly I am more of a progressive than I am a conservative. But the version of the fascist of the left is the insistence that they have everything figured out from a social standpoint. And if you disagree with them, that automatically means that you're either a misogynist, a racist, or a homophobe, or a transphobe. And it's just like, oh, for fuck. Like, really? Like, so that is and this is where it's going to sound like Jordan Peterson, that is a cultural Marxist kind of characteristic, right? Like to sort of create a hierarchy of victims and any type of criticism that happens to land on like the lap of anybody, even if it's honest, like legit criticism, means that you can be written off as a bigot. And that is making moderates go conservative. It just is.
Yep. I've been on the receiving end. I tick off a few boxes. I've even been on the receiving end of it myself.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's yeah, all of that to me, I just consider that energy vampirism.
Yeah.
Right. And life's too short. Ain't nobody got time for that. Like, as you go discuss that in your silos, be right, be alone, be right, but be alone. And the rest of us, moderate, reasonable people will actually have grown up discussion because I don't have time.
Extremism is bad for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm a big fan of temperance. But I was wondering though, are you hearing anything about the possibility that, just because the way this is being done, it's so literally, they tried, chuckles with Scheer and they tried cuddles with O'Toole, and now they're just trying as nasty as we want to be, right? With Pierre. And it just seems to me that had they found an elegant way to do whatever it is that they wanted to do or something, but this is just so nasty and it's so ham-fisted and it's so obvious. It's as transparent as saran wrap that something fishy is going on. It just seems that, and like two people are being taken out with the same shot like this, and two of them have a certain amount of name recognition. It just seems to me that if Pierre wins, there's a certain number of those MPs that probably won't run again and don't want to follow him, maybe 30, 40. It seems like a solid base.
Yeah.
To have something like this. But is there anything? Because it just seems to me that it almost seems to me like they're daring them.
Well, if the Liberals were more about strategy than they were about maintaining power, they would force Trudeau to resign, and they would put someone like a Chrystia Freeland or a Mark Carney in as leader, and then have the next election be someone completely not polarizing like Trudeau, someone fresh-faced like Freeland or a Mark Carney to go against Poilievre and win, because they probably would.
Yeah.
Trudeau is the Hillary Clinton of whatever the next election is. Yeah. And whether you like him or not, that is where you're going to have to rest your laurels. On a guy who is hated by not just conservatives in this country, but people who are moderates or even people who are more left than him, who just can't stomach him anymore. We have Trudeau fatigue, a lot of us, where we might agree with the policy. It's sort of like a bizarre world Trump situation. Because even if I agreed with a lot of things Trump said, I would never vote for that man because he's a fucking shit show. He's a rodeo clown. And I feel about Trudeau on the other side. He's a cupcake. He's weak. He's sniveling. He's kind of dishonest. And I don't want to vote for him. You remove him from the equation, and all of a sudden the next election becomes really interesting.
You can't vote for him.
The person that represents the Liberal in the writing that I live in.
I'm being pedantic for a reason. Because people are like, well, you voted for him. No, I've never voted for him in my life. And I know.
Well, a vote for whatever the name of the Liberal is in my writing is a vote for Trudeau.
James, I know that you have to go really soon. Just before you go, where do you think this goes?
Where do I think what goes?
Just like at the moment, Patrick's called in a lawyer. They're saying it's done. Well, I don't know if Charest going to have more to say about this or something. Leslie,
I am right now. I just received a bunch of stuff today that will add another layer to the story. We can't really get into it, but it looks like, put it this way, the whistleblower didn't just wake up one day and have a crisis of conscience and decide to blow the whistle. She was recruited. And I have the text in the emails that shows that she was recruited. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of days when I start releasing that stuff, if that's going to make a difference at all. I think I have a call scheduled with Patrick Brown's attorney, and I'm going to have to do everything I can to make sure I maintain professionalism when I'm on that call, because she's so fucking hot and intelligent. Swear to God. I know I sound horrible, but Jesus Christ, that woman is amazing.
You're still human.
Sorry. I have a crush on you.
Well, you know what? Like this, you know what? If it's about brains, I'm right with you.
She's a triple threat. Yeah. She's tough. She's super, super smart, and aesthetically, everything that you need. It's just triple threat.
Yeah. Some people do. You know what I keep on hearing all the time is you can have it all, but not all at once. She
I
might
would
be an
just, I would
exception.
literally drive to her house just to make her coffee and then just leave. I would just leave. I would crush the beans by hand. I would just do anything she want. Anyways, never mind. I'll stop talking about this now. Out of
All
respect.
right. Kids, there might be more developments clearly coming up on this, so stay tuned. And if you have a chance, and if you're interested in this story in particular, please listen to James's podcast, Blackballed, on the Dean Blundell Network. Thank you, James, for
you,
your
guys.
insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Well, that was good. That was good. It was informative. I know we went a little bit off topic from time to time, as we tend to do, but that's okay.
That's okay.
We're here to have a conversation, right?
Right.
And James has insights that we don't necessarily get access to either, right? So it was cool that he could come on and help us out at the same token, because, like I said, he's able to get into places that you and I aren't.
Yeah, well, exactly, right. And I mean, when I want to get information from somebody, when I want to have somebody on, I want someone that's, as closely involved to the subject matter as possible. And it was just, as I was like following his account all week, it's like, wow, he knows this. And, and then I decided, well, let's listen to his, Patrick Brown episode, because he has a 2-part one. I think the second part might be coming out later. But the first part, I listened to it and it's like, okay, he is on this, and, just happens to be part of our network. So, why not? So I just sent him a little email. But yeah, it's just, I mean, holy crap, man. How messy is this?
Yeah.
Like just messy, 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 messy. And then messier and messier and then messier still.
We're getting into very strange territory in politics in this country. Skippy has done things that no politician ever would have even, forget about thought about, even had a nightmare about, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure Joe Clark, I would love to be able to talk to Joe Clark, and I've seen him around the neighborhood from time to time. I would love to get his input on this, because Joe Clark is a progressive man. Progressive.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, if you look at historically that progressive conservative party, I think they would be much more in line with a lot of the policies of the current Liberal Party, and in many of the NDP party as well. I'm not 100%, but again, very middle of the road, right? Which is what we're known for in Canada. Take the middle of the road, try and help people on both sides. And I didn't both sides that, okay? There's not both sides of a coin where one side is Nazis and the other side is everybody else. That's not what I was talking about. But sorry about that. My throat got dry and I missed the cough button. If you go back to that time, the late 70s, early 80s, Joe Clark, Pierre Trudeau, Ed Broadbent, the three of them were not that far apart on issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I know damn well that Joe Clark, again, let me rephrase that. I am speculating that Joe Clark would have nothing to do with this party.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've not heard a public comment from him, but I'm sure there's no way he would have anything to do with this party.
Mm-hmm. There was he was interviewed on the Hurley Burley a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, and they did touch upon it. I listened to it. Unfortunately, it was so many months ago that I really don't remember what it is he said.
Well, it's gotten so much worse since then, though. So
exactly.
I'd love to hear. And what about former Prime Minister Kim Campbell?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say Kim Crawford, but that's a vineyard from New Zealand. Kim Campbell, she's been very vocal about wanting nothing to do with this party. Absolutely nothing to do with them. She thinks they're all deplorables because none of them are progressives. And this is a former prime minister who was asked to take over the Titanic after they hit the iceberg.
Yeah.
She was set to take the fall. We all know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I felt terrible for her because I thought she was an interesting, progressive individual. I liked a lot of the things she had to say, but we all knew it was a sinking ship at that point in time, and it was.
Yep, absolutely. Even former Prime Minister Mulroney had also said something like, as we mentioned earlier in the show, not being able to see himself in the current iteration of the party. So
Yeah, that should tell you something, right?
it's taken a turn. It's taken a turn. I mean, it's obvious that it is, but I mean, it's just it's not even confirmation at this point. I don't know. It's just more like it's a pylon at this point, really, of confirmation.
Well, it's like you said earlier. It's at one point in time they had, the Liberals had the NDP and to a lesser extent the Greens to deal with, as a competition in an election, right?
Right.
Whereas the Conservatives had, well, just the Conservatives.
They were the only game in town, and that's the thing. When James was talking about the memberships and all that kind of stuff, it's I get that, but now the people, if you're not pure enough,
mm-hmm.
their Max is waiting for them with open arms.
Oh yeah, and he'll take them in.
Right? It's like it's like it's like your man's not treating you right. Come get yourself a man who will confirm all your worst. But it's like if Pierre's too soft for you, it's like I'll be more extreme, like this. And if you want more extreme and you want me to separate, pardon.
The Maverick Party is not a real thing. That's an Alberta party only. It's not a national party. They're trying to be, but they're a separatist party to begin with. So
but
just dismiss them.
But it's the bloc on the other side, right? The
Yes.
bloc is mostly on the left, except for that little dalliance they had after Giuseppe left the second time, which they plummeted, almost disappeared by trying to go right. That's what I mean. It's like you have like close to the center, the Liberals and the Conservatives, and the Conservatives are taking another like 3 steps to the right. Because then you got the NDP and you got the PPC. Because then you have the Bloc and you have the Mavericks, so they each have their separatist faction. And then you got the Greens right in the middle. Right? It's just, but they've got back in the day. If they were trying to raise all the money from the social conservatives during the leadership campaign and then doing the 2-step to the middle, I was like, well, where else are you going to go? What else are you going to vote for? Right? Well, now they have options. That's the part, right? And so the party had a decision to make whether or not they were going to tack closer to the center or make that step to the right. And they've decided to take that step clearly to the right. And that's what I'm thinking is that because while moderates and I'll call them the untethered or the loudmouths both donate generously to their conservative parties, it seems that the loudmouths and the untethered are more representative of fools and their money.
Soon parted, yeah, I would say so.
They donate a lot and they donate often.
Yeah. Well, and as you said in the past, it's the angry that donate. If you're happy and life is going good, you don't need to give money to a political party because your life is in a nice place. But if you feel you've been wronged and somebody says, I'll fix it, just send me some money, I'll make those people pay.
I hate the same people you hate and I can do something about it.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's running on.
Basically. I was trying to do a villain voice from the old Spider-Man show, but I couldn't get it right in my head. I'll get them. Spider-Man. Sorry.
I think I know which one you're talking about too.
You get it, right? You get it.
Yeah.
Them.
All right, kids. We're going to stop here to pay a few bills and we'll be back to close off the show after this.